Welcome to the Glow Up Girl podcast. I'm Kyra Mitchell-Lewis, and thank you all for joining. Hope everyone is doing well out there. I hope your week is going fabulous. Today, I'll be joined by Sonia Frontera, author, empowerment trainer, and divorce lawyer. Sonia will share her personal journey from heartache to healing, as well as tell us how she helps her clients through similar journeys. So stay tuned, everyone. I'll be right back with Sonia. Welcome back to the Glow Up Girl podcast. I'm Kyra. All right, so now I am back with Sonia. So welcome to the Glow Up Girl podcast, Sonia.
Thank you so much for having me, Kyra. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Yes. Well, let's kick off with you telling everyone out there a little bit about yourself and what you do for a living.
Well, I'm an attorney by trade. I have been practicing law for 27 years now. And I'm also a Gyrl of all trades. I do all kinds of different things. I'm an empowerment trainer and an author. And right now, I'm just pivoting towards what I really love to do more, which is to empower others. And I'm looking forward to the pandemic being over so I can be doing more live events, workshops, and seminars, which is what I love more than actually I'm practicing divorce law and immigration right now. So I'm really excited about pivoting and finding more ways to help people.
Awesome. I love that. Now, have you been doing, obviously, like a lot of people have been doing a lot of virtual discussions and keynotes of that things like that over the last 2 years?
Of a lot of virtual stuff. So I am ready for in person.
Right. Yes. I know a lot of people are, a lot of us are just, ready to see like just humans in person. Right. So
yes.
All right. Well, let's dig into our discussion today. So we are talking about going from heartache to healing. And you have graciously agreed to share, some of your personal experience with us, but then also you'll talk about how you do empower others and how you are able to help them through not only your writing, because you are a published author as well, but then also just any programs that you offer as well. So let's talk about first marriage. And let's start with, for being in a toxic marriage. First of all, let's talk about what that looks like, what it could look like first. And then if you would go into some advice that you may have for women who may be in a similar situation or anyone that's listening.
Well, my marriage started out on the wrong foot. I discovered within 24 hours of the wedding that I had married a psychologically abusive man. And my whole world collapsed at this moment. And I was just terrified. I had no idea what to do. And it took me almost 7 years to figure out my way out. And it is a very, very difficult place to find yourself in, especially if you're religious. I am a devout Catholic, and I was raised to get married and stay married. And having at the onset a marriage that was really wrong and unhealthy was really devastating to me. So I went through the process of empowering myself until I was able to make the decision that was right for me. Which was to end the marriage and rebuild my life from scratch. And I am not suggesting that, anyone who's having issues in their marriage should run to divorce court. But if you find yourself in a marriage where your spouse is abusive, where your spouse puts you down, look for help. Because this is the kind of thing you can't go at alone, and that you need to really discover on your own terms, what is a healthy relationship? What does it look like for me? Can I create it with my spouse? And if not, how to end it compassionately and in a way that is healthy, that allows you to start your life all over again on the right foot this time.
Wow. So, my gosh, I can't imagine, like you said, in the first 24 hours of realizing that, oh, wow, like I've got to get out of this. So were you in a place when you first realized that? I guess how long did it take for you to get to a place of? I know you said it took took you 7 years to kind of get to a place where you could exit it, right? But how are you sustaining there? How are you keeping Sonia safe? How are you keeping your sanity during the time that you were working towards an exit plan?
I have to confess, this is something that happened not by design, but by default. Um, I happen to be also, in addition to having a spouse that was psychologically abusive and getting those emotional beatings on a constant basis, I also found myself in a dead end job. And at the age of 25, I felt like my life was at a dead end. And I just mentioned it to my dad. He came to visit and he said to me, that's what happens when smart people have dumb jobs. And I didn't have exactly a dumb job. I was an HR professional, but I had the circumstances were not ideal for growth. And I decided to go to law school. And law school served two different purposes. For one thing, it took me away from my abusive situation because I was working full time and I was going to school at night. So I was rarely at home and I was studying over the weekend. So that placed a buffer between me and the abuse. And at the same time, it provided me with empowerment through community. I had a new group of friends in school, and I had the intellectual stimulation. And also, it opened the door for me to start a new life from scratch because I was going to have a new career. And to any listeners that would say, oh my God, like I'm not going to go to law school. You don't have to go to law school. You have to start empowering yourself by doing things that make you feel better about yourself, that help you feel like you live on purpose, and that you're giving yourself the opportunity to start over, right? In a way
Yeah.
that's empowering.
Yes. Wow. Okay. So I have some follow-ups to that. So okay, so you first of all, you are 25 years old, and that is, like you said, that is very young. And my gosh, like I can't imagine what you were going through. Like no one can put themselves in your shoes, but man, like I applaud you for just the maturity that you were able to like show and to be able to come to a plan for something that was better for you. Because a lot of people wouldn't be able to do that. A lot of people would just say, well, I'm just going to try to stay and make it work because I'm young and I don't have, a great career path right now. So kudos to you first.
Thank you.
And so I guess, and my other question is, so obviously you made a decision very early on about what your next steps were going to be. If you don't mind me asking, what was the mindset of your partner then? I mean, was he aware that, like this isn't working for us? Or, were there some stops along the way in the journey where you maybe tried to make it work, or you thought about, okay, maybe we can, if you don't mind discussing that part.
Oh, I am here, and I hope my story will help your listeners who might be in a similar situation. And again, I was a good old Catholic girl, and to me, ending my marriage was a very difficult thing to do, and I did work really, really hard at trying to make it work. Obviously, I'm an attorney now. It's because I am verbal and I am not shy and I'm not at a loss for words very often. So I did try a lot to speak up and say, hey, this is not working. But when it comes to people who are abusive, they think that they're in the right and that you are wrong. And these are people who are not going to change. But I wanted to convince myself, and that's why I advocate in my books and my content that you should not make divorce the first step. right? You should not immediately run for divorce. You should try to make it work, unless, of course, there is violence. If you find yourself in an abusive, violent situation, if you are being harmed, get help. Because in general, abusive situations don't get better, they escalate over time. So, at the time, I didn't realize I was being abused, which is something that very often we don't realize. Women who are in abusive situations don't know it because many of these behaviors are normalized. And you're putting up with someone who's trying to make you look and feel like you are wrong and you're the crazy one. So that is one of the reasons why I knew something was wrong. I knew this was not healthy. I knew it was not sustainable. But I just had to really stay the course and figure out what was my way out. And I didn't have any support, which made it very difficult. And that's why empowering myself, and I had an education, I had a job from hell, in the sense that it was not a good job, but I had the ability to get a different job. And I had, a career pathway. But for someone who doesn't have that ability to do that, you have the ability to start from scratch and look for ways and opportunities to bring your gifts forward and use your talents, because that's the foundation to a happy life.
Yes, also I love that, and I do agree with you, because I think now we obviously live in a time where it is more talked about, like being with partners who may be narcissistic, or talking about behaviors like gaslighting, or
Mm.
things of that nature. It's more of a popular, for lack of a better word, conversation that's being had. But I can imagine, when you're a lot younger, even like when I was younger and got married, I mean, like, they just, nobody was taught, you didn't hear that. So yes, if someone's in a relationship that may not be healthy, they may not know, because they just don't know the signs, because it's just acceptable behavior. Oh, that's how men, that's how men are, boys will be boys, that sort of thing. So I'm very, I'm so glad that, on the show, I can have guests like you, and guests like other women who have gone on the journey, and are able to help anyone else out there who's listening or watching to identify those behaviors early on.
Yes, and it's really important. And that's why I'm out there. I'm here to share the shortcut so people don't have to go through what I'm going through. And I've been a domestic violence advocate for 28 years. So I know what it's like from my personal experience. I know from having had to receive training in order to work in this arena. And I know that most people are struggling and their loved ones don't know. And even sometimes when you reach out for help, they are not in a position to help you. And that's why it's really important to reach out to your local domestic violence counselors and agencies, or the National Domestic Violence Hotline, so you can get help, so you can understand the signs, and you can also develop an exit strategy.
Hmm. Yeah, and I also too appreciate, speaking to the religious aspect of it as well, because I mean, I know myself growing up, pretty religious, that it was like, you're gonna get married. Well, divorce is not like it's not going to be the option, or it's not. You shouldn't be getting a divorce. Like, you should be trying to, save your marriage. And I appreciate that, because I do think that's important, because when that's a part of who you are and what makes you your values and who you are, it's not the first step. But like you said, if there's a case where not only, yes, it could be physical abuse, but emotional abuse is also a very important thing to make sure that you take notice of, and that you get out just the same. Because I think sometimes the emotional and verbal abuse can eventually lead to the physical abuse. And so
Absolutely.
so we just have to, and I think it's important for women, or men, or anybody who's listening to us, that, I mean, it's okay to not feel as if you failed because of, Like, just, I mean, there's a little thing about repenting in prayer and talking to God, and God will listen, and he'll, like, he's not going to be like, no, you're out of here, because you got a divorce. I think that situations are different, and you have to take care of yourself, and you have to do what's best for you to live a life that feels complete for you.
Absolutely. And you touched on a few points that are really important. And very often, especially religious people, you could be suffering this is a new term that I learned from a fellow author, what's called spiritual abuse, and that's something that is not very talked about. And spiritual abuse can happen in a number of different ways, but sometimes our church is against marriage, against divorce. For instance,
Mm-hmm.
being Catholic, you were shunned. Now with Pope Francis, things are different. But back in the day, I mean, you could not, you were shunned. You can't receive communion, and you're looked down upon as a second-class citizen. And also, in some communities, you would find that the clergy sides with the abuser and tells you that you have to remain in the marriage and make it work. And in fact, this author I'm talking about, Linda Kurth, she told me that her pastor said, if you divorce, the devil wins. And we can't look at these things in black and white terms because there's a lot of gray areas. And similarly, when your spouse knows that divorce is not an option, that's a weapon they can use against you. And that's something that was used against me. My ex-husband would say, you can't divorce me because you're Catholic. Ha ha. And that is spiritual abuse as well. And I was able to snap out of it because I received help from the clergy, and they said unequivocally, get out. You're being abused. And that was really empowering to me, to have someone to tell me it is okay. So you really need, it's a conversation you need to have with your God, instead of getting away from your faith and your religion because you're not getting your support from your community of faith. This is the kind of thing that you need to have that conversation with God and say, I'm doing my best. Help me, guide me to do what is right, because I want to praise you, please you, and honor you. Lead the way. And I am not sorry that I divorced. I know in my heart of hearts that I did the best that I could. I made some mistakes along the way. I'm not perfect, but you need to make that decision and make it very carefully.
Awesome. All right. So let's talk about why do you think women end up in these types of relationships? Why do you go for the wrong versus, why do you think that happens? And then, if you do find yourself there, let talk through. I know you've talked about it in terms of, what you did as a part of your journey, but, if there are just like three things that you thought maybe that could help them to sort of make that turn, let's talk about those as well.
I think we get into the wrong marriages for a number of different reasons. And if I had to point one general cause, it would be our social messaging or social programming. For instance, we're told by society that you need to be married to be acceptable. You have to marry. You have to have 2.3 kids, the house with a picket fence. And then celebrities make us feel like we need to have that celebrity style wedding with all the fixings and bells and whistles. And we have like Jerry Maguire, you complete me. You feel incomplete without a partner. So you need a partner to validate you. And also we have also not just the patterns that are given to us by society, our parents ourselves, right? We see how our parents interacted, and we think that is what relationships look like, or we want to do the complete opposite of what our parents did. So we have a number of different reasons that and patterns, social patterns that lead us to select a certain kind of partner. And when we go about marriage that way, without awareness, without developing our own thoughts of what is a relationship, a healthy relationship, like for me? What does it look like? It's not something that has been passed down to you, right? A package, a
Right.
life that has been prepackaged. So my remedy for this, and that's what I advocate in my books, is awareness. You need to come to understand when you find yourself in these situations is, where is this idea, where is this thought coming from, right? Is this a thought that is true? Does it serve me? And can I replace it with something else that is more authentic to me? And then make that determination from a position of power, right? And a position of clarity. So to me, awareness is really the antidote to having relationships that are unhealthy, getting into these relationships, staying trapped in these relationships, and worst of all, if you don't develop that clarity and that awareness, you're going to be repeating those same mistakes with future partners. Even after you end that marriage, you will be marrying the same person in a different body, which we see all the
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah. Yes. Those are great because that is so true. I mean, I think along with people just feeling like you said, feeling like I must be married to feel like a validated member of society, so to speak, or you see people see their friends and they see their friends starting to get married, so then they want to get married, or like you said, I think
Yes.
social media is like the probably the cherry on top of like all of them, because it is just people seeing this almost like not real thing in front of them of like all the good that people want to show us and all the great things. But I mean, these people that are showing these things, I mean, they have problems and they have issues as well, but you don't often get to see that. I mean, you do, with some you do, but for the most part, they're not talking about, well, this is what we think makes a great relationship, or I'm going into it looking for a partner that I can communicate with. Like nobody's talking, they're not talking about that part. And I do wish, because they have so much influence on, younger, especially the younger generations. I mean, it's everyone, but especially the younger generations coming up, that they would just be like, yeah, be real, truly authentic. And if you're going to share, like, share all the stuff. I want your ugly stuff. I want your pretty stuff. Like, we want all of your stuff, because that just lets people know that, like, you're going through the same things. Like, you're human and they're human, but it's often the facade of, like, no, I'm so perfect. My world is perfect. You can't come in this bubble.
Yes, and that is very sad. And you know what? What I find most shocking is, and you can see this a lot with celebrities, and they're posting all these wonderful photos, and next thing you know, they're going through a really nasty divorce, and it's like, okay, how could this happen overnight, right? And you
Right.
realize what
Yeah.
they're putting out there is self-serving
Yeah.
content,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Like it
And they
didn't happen
create that
overnight.
expectation that that's how life is supposed to be, when in fact it's not.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like it didn't happen overnight. It was going on in the background. We just didn't have access. They didn't ask us to view that part.
Right. They don't
um,
want you to see it. They don't want it.
exactly. So Sonia, when you got to a place of being able to walk away from your marriage, and then moving into more of a healing space, what did that feel like for you? Was it hard? What obstacles did you encounter as you tried to heal?
I'm really an oddball in this regard, because, and this is something I do in my life. I'm realizing I have this pattern. I do the healing before the end. And in my case, I did the work beforehand. I empowered myself first. And I boosted myself before I went through the same step, this tough step of ending the marriage. And that's what I advocate to my readers and followers. Start the healing now, right? The time to start healing is not when the divorce judgment is issued. It's in this very moment. It is right here. It is right now. And start generating those feelings of success. You mentioned feeling like a failure earlier. And that's one of the most terrible thought patterns that we have in society, because ending your marriage or a relationship not working out is not a failure. It is a learning experience from which you build up your life. So, and that's what I did. I did the healing beforehand, and I worked with a therapist, a different therapist along, with insurance and me being, a student and all. I worked with different people, but I really recommend work with somebody who's going to help you go through the process so that it is less painful. I think the most important way to have a divorce that is successful and the recovery being easier is doing the work early and building your life in advance to the degree that you can. And you may surprise yourself that once you feel better about yourself, once you're more empowered, you may even be able to heal your relationship, right? And not make, you may be able to save your marriage. Or if you cannot save your marriage, you may have a divorce that is less contentious and that is more compassionate and amicable, which is really a good starting point when you end your marriage, because divorce can be a really nasty process, very devastating and destructive. So avoid all that pain if you can by starting early and taking positive steps.
I like that. That's very good advice. So would you say after you left your marriage, were you able to come to an amicable space with your partner, with your ex-husband?
Yes, and I tried to keep the marriage alive as much as I could. And again, I did that healing. I did the forgiveness work so that I was able to move forward from scratch. And that's where a lot of people go wrong, because they hang on to all those hurts and all the things, all the wrongs that you feel were done to you. So to the degree that you start the healing process, once the divorce is over, you can start from a place of empowerment, from a place that is more peaceful. So the end of my marriage was better than the preceding years.
Mhm. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I love that, because I do think is that forgiveness part is the key part, because I do agree. I think a lot of people tend to sort of cart that baggage of, like, they did this to me, they did this, and they take it to the next relationship, and then it's like hanging over the head of like the new person, because they're just almost like expecting that, like, because they haven't let go. So I think that is definitely great advice. Now, let's talk about moving beyond that relationship and thinking on like dating after divorce. What are your thoughts on that subject?
Well, I had such an oppressive marriage that I did not want to date for a while. And I didn't date for 4 years. And I have to say, those were some of the best years of my life. And I highly recommend to anyone who has gone through a divorce, don't date right away, because we tend to use relationships to numb ourselves or to validate us because our esteem is lower after going through an experience like this. So you need to fall in love with yourself and become your own best friend first, and start doing things that make you happy and make you joyful and that bring you satisfaction. And then when you are happy and fulfilled, then you have something good to bring into the next relationship. And also, you will be attracting people who are more in tune with who you are, who you have become, with whom you can have a better, healthier connection, instead of having a foundation that is built on the negativity, right? And you will find that if you are still hung up on your spouse, if you're still rehashing the old hurts, you're going to be attracting somebody who's also emotionally unavailable, because you really aren't unavailable to the degree that you're still tied to the other person. You need to let that go. You need to release, learn your lessons, take the time to figure out what went wrong, right? What are the lessons that came through this relationship? Be grateful for them and bless your spouse, the relationship with love, and just let it go.
Yes. Awesome. I like that. All right. Well, now let's talk about your books. You have two. I love. Okay, so relationships, relationship solutions, and then do you keep your husband or do you post them on Craigslist? So please, please tell us about those two books.
Well, my first book was Solve the Divorce Dilemma. Do you keep your husband or do you post them on Craigslist? And something that some people don't know about me is that I wanted to be a writer since I was in high school. And I went the safe route, which is something I have realized I do a lot in life. And I decided, my dad said, I'm not paying for a BS major, so I'm not paying for journalism school. You have to do something else. So I did dual in finance and journalism. So I always lived with that nagging feeling that I betrayed myself and I didn't follow my first love, which was writing. So after I had to retire from work because I got sick, I said, maybe this is an opportunity. I had more flexibility and I had more time. I decided I wanted to write again. And I was inspired to write Solve the Divorce Dilemma after going to a forgiveness retreat where I realized a lot of the women in the retreat were still hurting from their divorces or in their marriages. And I said, this is a good opportunity to use my experience to help others so they don't have to go through what I went through. And that's why I wrote Solve the Divorce Dilemma. Do you keep your husband or do you post them on Craigslist? So people who feel trapped in their relationships the way I did can get to that point of clarity and make the decision that is right for them, how to carry it out, and how to move forward in freedom. So that book, because the title is a bit provocative, guys were reading the book, right? And they liked the book, but they were complaining that it was biased towards women. And that's why I decided to write Relationship Solutions, Effective Strategies to Heal Your Heart and Create the Happiness You Deserve, which is a gender neutral version, which has it's an expanded version, which has the same reflection exercises that help you get to that point of clarity and to start building a foundation to a new and happier life. So the book is something that the second book, Relationship Solutions, is something that anyone who's in an unhappy marriage can use alone or with their partner to see if they can salvage the relationship. And if not, make that decision to end the relationship amicably and they can move forward. So those are my two books. And I also published a booklet to educate people about domestic violence. And it is called Stop the Hurt, The Truth About Domestic Violence. Everyone Needs to Hurt. And it's a quick read. It's 50 pages. And it's to help people recognize the signs in their own relationships, or for those who love them to recognize them as well and learn how they can help them end these relationships that are being harmful.
Awesome. And where can they find all of your books?
My books are available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and anywhere where electronic books are sold. And there's paperback copies as well. And if you want autographed copies, you can reach out to me and get them through my website.
And tell us your website.
It's www.soniafrontera.com.
Welcome back to the Glow Up Girl podcast. I'm Kyra. Thank you again, Sonia, for joining the show today. If you'd like to learn more about Sonia and her work, feel free to visit her at soniafrontera.com. You can also check show notes and you can find the link there as well. Check us out at glowupgirl.com, so you'll find everything there, from our social handles to previous podcast episodes, and so much more. So if you have any ideas or thoughts, or there's something you want me to talk about on this show, feel free to drop me an email at hello@glowupgirl.com, or you can reach out to me on Instagram at glowupgirl. Just go ahead and send me a DM. All right, guys, thank you so much for stopping in and listening and spending some time with me today. I'm so appreciative and so thankful for all of you who listen to the show weekly. So I'll see you all again next week. Until next time, stay focused, fab, and glow up. Take care, everyone.